Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, Armand Kafai, John Arnold. We've been all over the place. John's been out in Marfa. I'm up in beautiful Chicago, which is, John, actually not hosting any of the summer of soccer games going on right now. There will be no soccer in Chicago. Maybe
Shout out Rahm Emanuel.
Shout out, Rob. Maybe the Fire are at home this weekend. Maybe the Stars are at home this weekend. I don't want to discount MLS or NWSL, but we will not be talking about any of those leagues this week because we have got Gold Cup, we've got Club World Cup, we've got plenty to talk about. So we will get into the 6 hottest topics of the week. This is The Hex. Guys, it is Gold Cup week. We kick off with Mexico on Saturday night. The U.S. kicks off on Sunday. And for our first segment, we want to go with a vibe check for the United States. Now, we are recording this before they play Switzerland tonight. That game is in Nashville, right? They play Switzerland in Nashville. They are coming off a 2-1 defeat to Turkey in Hartford East Rutherford, I guess, on Saturday. Armand, you watched the game. Taking that game into account and in general, what does success look like for the United States at this Gold Cup without Pulisic, we'll talk about later, and without quite a few other stars?
I mean, the standard is for the U.S. to win the Gold Cup. That's what it's always been throughout. And look, yes, there's going to be tougher competition in Mexico and Canada, relative to what the U.S. is. But the U.S. has to win a World Cup. Success for a Gold Cup is winning it and also bringing in players that's going to make it harder for Mauricio Pochettino to choose his World Cup roster. I think there's going to be players that are going to get these opportunities. We saw that. I think Weston McKennie, I'm not sure if he's playing. Adams, we saw is going to be out. Pulisic, we all know about. There's going to be players that are going to be asked to step up in these situations. Ricardo Pepi is still out. These players are all going to step up in situations. Success for me, Daniel. Look, you need players that can compete, like Diego Luna. I think who's getting in there, getting rough and dirty, especially against Turkey. You want players that make it hard. I mean, that's it really. Like make it hard for Mauricio Pochettino and win. Maybe if you want to be a little bit more generous, make it to the final. But I think success in all this is a win. I think winning the tournament would be huge for the morale because right now it's kind of up in the air. The Nations League defeats were really brutal for the side after coming off some initial optimism of Mauricio Pochettino. But for me, John, I think it's win or bust.
Yeah, well, I think that any attempt to say otherwise is revisionist history, right? Yes, of course, you have to take the context into account. But for years, people have been saying that Gold Cup in 2025, for a while, people thought maybe it would be an expanded field and all these different rumors. It basically looks like always, but the U.S. always should win it. I mean, that should be the standard for the U.S. It should be the standard for Mexico and Canada, as we'll get into in a minute. But I just think that they have to win this tournament. And I do think it would be a huge boost because, just getting good results ahead of that 2026 World Cup, September, October, November, wins and friendlies are not going to cut it as far as people really thinking, oh my gosh, this team is going in the right direction. Lift a trophy, have the confetti, however much relevance you put on the Gold Cup. I do think it's a major tournament. Other teams are bringing very strong rosters. So if you win it, you feel good. That's a great point you make, Armand, about other people stepping up as well. Could that be a secondary boost? Getting some players who maybe haven't been part of the picture to be absolute locks to make that roster come 2026. That would be a great kind of secondary benefit. But Daniel, I think it's the trophy, man.
Well, it all goes hand in hand, though, right? I don't really see a Gold Cup where the United States is successful on the field, where they don't have players who elevate their game and make a case to be on that World Cup roster, which we don't know exactly how many players that World Cup roster is going to be, do we, at this point? Have they said? I mean, I think they'll probably make it up as they go along. So who knows exactly how many players are going to be included on that. But as you were talking about it, I was thinking, well, to me, the main goal here is, can you identify 3, 4, 5 players from this roster, like a Jack McGlynn, that can impact potentially the World Cup roster? However, they go hand in hand. If those players don't step up, the team's going to get bounced probably in the semifinals. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I would say, though, it's all about confidence. It's all about identifying maybe secondary leaders. And Armand, looking at the Turkey game real quick, I was actually encouraged by the game. I thought they played well. I thought that was one of the best performances I've actually seen. They had a couple of hiccups, and I do worry that's a theme that could happen in the Gold Cup, playing well for 88 minutes. but having a bad 5 minutes against a veteran team like a Canada, like a Honduras, hit you in a knockout round because they don't have those players that can break down. That Turkey roster was better than I would say. That was on a Mexico Canada level. Would you agree? I mean, what did you think about that game?
Yeah, they started off really strong. The U.S. did. And then you kind of saw them fold under pressure towards the end of the first half. They couldn't build out of the back. They all of a sudden struggled against the
They were
press,
rattled.
and they were completely out of their depth, at the moment until Pochettino came in, made subs, kind of calmed everything down, and
Well,
it,
and
it
Tyler
looked,
Adams. They got to have Tyler
yeah,
Adams.
like
If
it
he's not
looked like to get
available,
better.
Pick up a knock, right?
he's not going to play tonight.
And he's not going to play the Gold Cup either. And
No,
here's
no,
the
no, no, no. That's is
He's
that
they said
today?
they said they don't think he's gonna play the Gold Cup either. So like
That's in
that
the
thing
last
is the midfield.
hour.
It goes out or it was today or yesterday too. If
I
you
also
look,
didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but
look it up. It's
maybe.
real. But look, the midfield's a problem point for them.
Yeah,
It's
Cardoso
definitely an
again.
issue.
Cardoso
Cardoso was
again.
rough. He was very rough. If you're Atletico Madrid watching this, you're like, are we being scammed? We don't know. But if like they need that presence in the middle, and right now they look so sloppy building out of it. Especially after that press that created that goal for them. All of a sudden, Turkey was like, all right, we're just going to press the hell out of you guys. And they looked completely out of their depth for the last 15, 20 minutes of the first half.
Yeah, but that's been the blueprint for a minute, right? Like that's been a problem for the U.S. in other matches, in matches against CONCACAF teams. It's Johnny is an anti-Gio. Gio Dos Santos, a player who just couldn't do it for his club, but when he played for the national team, you knew he was going to raise the level. We just haven't seen Johnny do it in the Stars and Stripes. Santi Jimenez, obviously in that same category for Mexico. It's very interesting, but I do think a tournament like this is so critical. We always talk about not just the games themselves, but the fact that you have a camp. This is the first real camp that Mauricio Pochettino has had, right? So I think we'll start to see him getting some favorites, start to see some players who understand, hey, this is his system. And look, like he's a guy who we know, as we'll get into in just a second, he wants those guys to be absolutely committed, absolutely grabbing things by the scruff of the neck and just be aggressive and love the national team. And I think he's going to figure out some of those guys who fit that profile here in the next month.
Sunday at 6:00, they kick off the Gold Cup against Trinidad. Then they will play Saudi Arabia on Thursday night and Haiti on Sunday, the 22nd at AT&T Stadium. The Pulisic war is not going down quietly, guys. It only seems to be getting even hotter, which will definitely be another thing to track during the tournament. All of the usual suspects have weighed in. Eddie Johnson has weighed in. Landon Donovan has weighed in. Christian Pulisic's dad has weighed in.
ChatGPT weighed in.
ChatGPT weighed in, of course. So, John, like, I don't know if there's a right or wrong in this situation, but like, no one comes out winning. No matter what happens here, no one comes out winning, right? Because it will persist.
I think the biggest sort of like, if you want to call it a battle, is Pulisic's dad versus Landon Donovan, and I think that Landon Donovan's, I think he has the right message, but he's probably the wrong messenger. This is a dude who took significant time off. I had a friend who's a reporter in an Asian country, and he said, hey, dude, Donovan, like, he was over here on vacation, like, in very important moments. And it's like, yeah, he was. But maybe he regrets that in hindsight. I don't know. I don't know. But like we said on the show, I think Pulisic should be there. But you're not going to change anything now. But also, this is the role of, like, us sports media. Like, there are a lot of big and important things going on in the world. We're going to talk about some of them here in a couple minutes. But, like, yeah, it's fine. I don't know, man. I do think that, like, this whole thing, and Landon Donovan and Tim Howard's podcast, like, more than anything, is like a sign that the U.S. has grown up as a soccer country. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but I can't tell you how many articles when I worked at Goal back in the day, we would bring, we would publish articles from other editions of Goal onto the American edition. It'd be an English guy you'd never heard of. But he was on the national team back in, I don't know, they won the 1966 World Cup, and he was the third, well, I guess he would have been the second goalkeeper back in the day because the rosters weren't that big. And he's grouching about Harry Kane or whatever. This stuff is just part of the stuff that sells. In Latin America, it's the same way. And you can kind of take it for what it's worth, right? Donovan, hey, one of the greatest national team players ever in the United States. Howard as well, right? Big respect for Eddie Johnson, but then Chat GPT never scored a goal. So I think, it just depends on what you want to take, what you want to put stock into, what you're interested in. As the ecosystem continues to grow, it'll be easier for people like Pulisic's dad, and other people that are targets of the criticism to block it out or occasionally to take note of it and fire back. I'm okay with all of it. I agree with you that no one comes off looking great, but I also think, hey, that's just how it is, man.
Yeah, I think you did nail it. Right message, wrong messenger. Because I have no problem with what Landon Donovan said, to be honest with you. Because even I was a little bit surprised watching that Portugal game, which great game. And UEFA Nations League delivered last weekend. That was very unexpected. Shout out to them. But you had Cristiano Ronaldo, who he hasn't won the World Cup, he has won the Euros. He's 40 years old. He can see his life flashing before his eyes in a lot of ways. There's one.
Are you gonna kill him?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill him. No, there's one competition left in his career, basically the World Cup next summer.
And World Cup this. Oh no, right.
Nope. I thought that was gonna happen. But
still good.
You want to see that passion, and we just don't see that much in the United States right now. And I hope that we can see that in the Gold Cup. I hope that we identify players who are very excited to be there and really want to win this tournament. And I know we talked about that in the last segment, but maybe that's another thing that success looks like, is seeing players who actually really, really want to win no matter what the circumstance is. Because Armand, I think that's the point that they're trying to make with Pulisic, that he doesn't.
I think, like you guys said, wrong messenger. I think the right messenger is Clint Dempsey in this. Clint Dempsey was on the Men. I think he's now a part of the Men in Blazers. I'm pretty sure it was on this podcast where he said, "I don't understand this." He goes, "Look, we had moments where I was injured and I have to rest some friendly games, but." For Confederations Cup, for Gold Cup, I wanted to be there. My mentality was I had to be there. So in his mind, he goes, I don't understand this. And I think that's the proper messenger in this. Is Clint Dempsey versus Landon Donovan, who disappeared for a bit and came back and was punished. And even Dempsey went on and said, hey, where were you, Landon, when we were grinding? And you weren't there. You were taking your sabbatical. I wonder if that kind of mentality that Dempsey's talking about trickles into some of the U.S. players as well.
Well, it's interesting because, look, I think that, it's easy to sort of, dismiss the, hey, back in my day, but you can also put, Dempsey or Howard as well, and I think Landon, too. You can put, hey, these guys did show up, right? They did do big things for the national team, just like the grouchy old English guy in 66 or whatever the case is, right? And I think it does give you sort of a position to speak, and I think that is something where the current group of U.S. men's national team players, I do think has gone wrong in this respect. They've been told for so long that they're so different, that there's never been a generation like this, that no U.S. players ever played at these levels before, that no one's ever been in this long of a season. And some of that is partly true because of the number of games. It is different, but not that different from Clint Dempsey playing a full club season, playing a UEFA a Champions League or Europa League or whatever the other competition, and then showing up for the national team. It's not that different, right, if you crunch the numbers. So I think it's worth sort of the grumpy old guys kind of trying to remind, hey, yes, we haven't seen this many players doing this at the same time, but we also lifted trophies and we won games that y'all haven't yet. We think you will. We hope you will. But so far it hasn't happened. So I agree with you, Armand, that, a guy like Dempsey, his voice really carries. And I think even a guy like Howard, EJ Sure, and look, I mean, well, we never played, but... But I think it's fine for people to talk about this, and that's what I guess I'm getting at. Everyone's going to get their opinion off, and if you want to take it seriously or not, that's up to you.
Real quick, the only thing I'm worried about, honestly, from a Pulisic standpoint is, does this enter his mind if the USA if he's not playing well in the first match, if he starts thinking, man, I'm going to get so much criticism from what I did last summer, does that even enter his mind? Does it add a little bit more weight? Does that add a little bit more pressure?
I mean, you would hope it does, Daniel, right? Because
I think that could be a good thing, right?
This is a World Cup on your home soil. And you're the captain. You're called Captain America, the LeBron James of soccer, as some people would call him. This pressure has to be on you. And if this pressure isn't on you, then what are you representing our country for? This is a big deal that I feel like sometimes that people kind of take for granted and stuff like that. A World Cup on home soil. You know how many of those ex-players would have killed to have that situation?
Moving on from the national team, let's get a vibe check And let's go to Armand first. We're going to look at the two other favorites, I would say. Those are the two other favorites for the Gold Cup. We're going to start off with Canada. Now, Armand, I would say vibes looking pretty good. Canada plays Ivory Coast tonight again in Toronto, but they beat a strong Ukraine side 4-2, and they were up 4-0
Yep.
right before stoppage time. They played Ukraine off the park. What are the vibes looking like right now for this Canada national team side who, of the three teams, I would say they have the trickiest group, Honduras, El Salvador, and a Curacao team that's looking pretty strong right now too. They do need to come strong.
I agree. And big vibe check if your last name is David on the national team. Two from Jonathan, one from Promise in their 4-2 victory over Ukraine. Look, I mean, the vibes are good. They played Mexico. Again, we have to kind of go back to Nations League for that context, but they played Mexico really well in that semifinal. They beat the U.S. They beat the U.S. Then they go on. They beat Ukraine. And again, you said they're up 4-0. Now they have a good test against Ivory Coast. Like I would say out of the three big powerhouse that we have, the Canadian team is the strongest one going into this in terms of good form and good vibes. Jesse Marsh has kind of figured out his, place there, even though he
was
weirdly brought about the whole poisoning.
Off. Yeah,
the whole poisoning thing, which no one agreed with him. But when it comes to it, I think. When it comes to the group, I mean, I don't think the group is as difficult. I think the US's group is slightly I wouldn't not Trinidad and Haiti, but I think Saudi is.
Yeah, I think the US has the easiest group personally.
Yeah, it's like the kind of the battle of mid in terms of the groups.
Depending on what Saudi brings, US has.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, but that's point. The vibes are good in wherever in Toronto you want to do it, except if you're an Edmonton Oiler fan, then the vibes are bad.
John, you said, though, we had a little bit of an argument after the Nations League where I was thinking Canada had a good Nations League and you were thinking they didn't have a good Nations League and that the standard is higher now. And if that's the case, then their expectations for success are exactly the same as the US's, right?
And exactly the same as Mexico's. I think all three of these teams who have won this trophy before, Canada only once in 2000, which is feeling a long time ago now. But all three of these teams that have lifted the trophy want to lift it again and should feel like look, if you're going to talk about CONCACAF this and we're the best and this confederation, blah, 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 and you can't even win the Continental Championship, I mean, what are you talking about? And I think all three fan bases and sometimes, players or managers have hinted at that, not necessarily the current groups. I think everyone's kind of in a place of respect at this point, especially for each other, for Panama, for Costa Rica, some of the bigger teams. But overall, I think that Canada has to try and win. And look, you talk about what kind of boost it would be for the U.S. to win the Gold Cup. If you're Canada and you get your first major trophy and you're about to play the group stage on home soil with this moment of national sort of pride because of the political things that have happened. We talked about the four nations. Jesse Marsh coming out against Trump, even though Jesse Marsh is American. I think that that's just such a wave that would be, almost unstoppable ahead of the World Cup. So, there are good vibes in Canada. Let's talk about Mexico a little bit. The vibes, they were good. Won the Gold Cup, won the Nations League, and then they played terribly against Switzerland in this friendly. We're again recording this before they play Turk J or whatever we're calling him now. But it wasn't good. It wasn't connected. It's not necessarily a lot of the team that Mexico will end up actually fielding at the Gold Cup, I don't think. Mexico fans never, ever want to see Charlie Rodriguez in the midfield. He didn't have a very good game. There were decent, moments, but I think everyone kind of saw the Jimenez thing up top again. And okay, here we go. This has good memories from the Nations League, and it didn't really connect. Although Santi scored, so
yeah. Well, something to rescue. It's funny because even though Mexico and the United States both lost, I feel like if you're a fan of El Tri, there is at least a little bit of trust there that okay, let's see how it goes tonight. If they play well tonight, I don't think
not even tonight, man. Not even tonight because I think so that the group, they're playing debutantes first, so it's at SoFi. So I mean, look, even if you got every Dominican in California at that stadium,
well, they can work their way into the tournament, right? It's Dominican at SoFi, Suriname at AT&T. surely they will already be through the group before they play Costa Rica, and that can kind of be just a little bit of a maybe a rest game, get right spot for a couple guys, and then you go into the games that really matter.
And I think that if these friendlies, how much stock do you put into them? I say not that much because other teams are playing World Cup qualification matches, which are so much more important, which they're going to have their top players at. Mexico, the U.S. rolling out these rosters, they're trying things, they're experimenting. Mexico's the defending champion of the Nations League. Mexico's the defending champion of the Gold Cup. I think as they sort of reach back in the memory bank for that, as they're sort of where's our vibe, I think they'll be in a fine place once the ball gets rolling.
So real quick, guys, predictions. Armand, you first. Finalists and winner.
Oh man, I have basically all the big teams topping their group, which if I'm doing
And winner.
Yeah, if I'm doing my math correctly, that would lead to a USA Canada semifinal, and then Mexico and else on the other side. I have Canada and Mexico playing, with Canada winning the grudge match in the Nations League.
Me too. That's exactly what I had. Canada, Mexico, and Canada winning. I think Canada's favored in a Canada versus USA match, and I think that with that second chance for Jesse Marsh, I think that he would have Canada ready to win. So I'm going Canada, Mexico, Canada winner. John?
I think Mexico defends their title, lifts the Gold Cup, beats the U.S. in the final.
What a final that would be. It's Energy Stadium, right, in Houston?
Yeah, down in Houston.
That would be a lot of fun, Armand. We may have to road trip down there. And
we do.
Quite a bit going on all around the country right now. It's a very strange time in the United States. Politics affecting a lot of different things, especially with all of the Gold Cup, a lot of the Gold Cup happening in LA. Really the only city that's kind of the epicenter of the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup, with games at the Rose Bowl and the Club World Cup, games at SoFi. All eyes in the world right now. A lot of it is in LA, where all of the I don't even know what you'd call it, just protests are happening. Obviously, we want to compare this we want to bring this into soccer though, and there is a very interesting question right now, John, about which players are even going to be available for the Gold Cup, because President Trump has obviously put bans in place on different countries and nationals coming into the United States from those countries, multiple ones of them in playing in the Gold Cup. How is that going to affect things?
Yeah, well, just one is on the full list, which is Haiti. Haiti's on the full list, but there's kind of a carve out in this travel ban that was passed, I think partly to give Infantino a bit of a fist bump. Hey, the World Cup is good. Hey, the Olympics are good. Athletes, their family, direct family members, and anybody on the staff can come in. We'll see what Haiti is able to do. A lot of those guys already are traveling on either French or American passports, because a lot of Haiti's team, Canada as well, comes from that diaspora of Haitians with such a difficult situation there right now. So that will have effects on the Gold Cup. What I'm really interested about is Saturday, when Mexico opens the tournament at SoFi, and we're talking about, Mexico's home field advantage. They're playing in this big NFL stadium. They're playing in this big NFL stadium where we're used to seeing fans fill the stadiums. But especially in LA, where also I can report that Mexico was planning to stay downtown. Things are a little up in the air right now as we record this. Hopefully we'll have some in the newsletter here the next couple of days.
Get CONCACAF, by the way. Subscribe to that.
Yeah, the newsletter getting CONCACAF. People are trying to figure out what's going on, and we wonder if people will be afraid to go to games, because these spaces that have been safe for so long, be it a certain neighborhood, be it restaurants, be it schools, have been raided by ICE trying to find people who they feel they should be detaining. And that's the situation we're in. So if people are afraid to go to games, a mass gathering of Mexican people, a mass gathering of Salvadoran people, a mass gathering of Honduran people, a mass gathering of Haitian people, there are all these communities that make that part of the reason the Gold Cup is in the U.S. every time and is lucrative is these communities come out to see their team. If people from those communities, whether their immigration status is
it hasn't mattered,
or if their immigration status is green card holder or permanent resident or in the process or seeking asylum or undocumented, whatever the status is, people may be afraid to turn up to these games, and you can understand that. So it'll be fascinating to watch. I think this tournament will be political. Politics already affecting one team in specific. Cuba today lost in the World Cup qualification match against Bermuda. Bermuda moves into the final round. Cuba's starting goalkeeper, Raiko Rosarena, Randy's brother, the baseball player, on the advice of his club and USL, decided to go back after the first game and not go to Cuba to try and enter the U.S. from Cuba, where that's on the partial ban list. Legally, he should be fine. He should be able to do that if he wants to, but they didn't want to run the risk. So Cuba doesn't have their number one. First goal, I gotta say, Raiko saves it. Randy, I don't know. Maybe he's got a baseball bat in the goal. You'd probably save it too. But Armand, it's just been this interesting situation, and we've seen other people raise the voice as well, and sort of try and draw attention to this. I think that, me watching the protest, you kind of have this powerless feeling, but people who are soccer fans and are in the game are trying to help.
And one thing I want to say, sorry, Armand, not to hop in, but something I was thinking about with this, John, is what a crazy juxtaposition it is now with Cuba, where during the Gold Cup in previous years, Cuba was afraid to send players to the United States because the players would be defecting. Now this is almost completely flipped, where players are afraid to go to Cuba. It's not that's not a positive. That's a very, very bad thing, and a very, very bad way that this country has had to change its own thinking on things. But what a crazy juxtaposition that it used to be Cuba that was afraid to send their people to the United States. It's the complete flip in many ways, and it's just so crazy for me to think about, and so sad to think about that these things will happen for people who are legally here. And even a tailgate. What does a tailgate looks like on Saturday if none of this is happening right now? What does a tailgate look like at SoFi Stadium? It's a party, man. It's the biggest party in the country, that parking lot. What's it going to be like this Saturday? Probably completely somber. And if people, I don't, this sounds almost ridiculous.
We'll see, man.
They wouldn't do it.
Yeah, but we'll see, man, because, even the demonstrations in LA, I'm sure you guys have seen videos as well. Like, it's like people dancing to La Chona and eating street food just like they do during the tailgates. But then all of a sudden there's a pepper spray ball or some joker lights a car on fire. Look, we don't want that either. But I think that, it'll be interesting to see kind of what the approach is from these authorities. But as these early games happen, I definitely think it's going to be a bit of a feeling out process for a lot of fans. And, we all believe soccer's for everyone. Armand, like I was saying, we watched some of the MLS matches, and even NWSL teams also kind of trying to say, hey, we're all in this together.
And you're Armand, your family's Iran, like you're Iranian, your family is Iranian. Like it has to hit home for you too.
I mean, it hits home for everybody, right? At least I'm the kid of immigrants, who came here in pursuit of a better life. And we saw something which really, I think, touched my soul a little bit in the LAFC game. LAFC, obviously this was ramping up. The 32-52 didn't say a single chant for the entire game until very, very late on, where they started chanting, "This is Los Angeles." You see a big abolish ICE sign. You see the I don't know what you'd call them, people spraying the ice cube and melting the ice, which is my favorite banner by far. I think it's hilarious. But we saw this in Nashville earlier this year too. Don't forget, guys, when ICE was conducting raids in Nashville, SC supporters felt unsafe, and the supporters did not show up to those games. So we've seen these real impacts happen to matches, and now it seems like President Trump wants to send in the Marines into this situation. It seems like things are escalating quite a bit in the city. How is this going to impact the Gold Cup? And like you said, John, how is it going to impact? Would you look, if it was me personally, regardless of whatever my status was, I wouldn't feel safe going to SoFi Stadium in the risk of what could happen, right? I mean, not to make this sound super political or anything like this, but if they're going into Home Depots, what's gonna stop them from going to a big sporting arena? We don't know what's gonna happen, and I think all in all, first off, beautiful display from the 32-52 throughout that match. That the silence was, I've never heard an LAFC game that quiet. It gave me COVID vibes. Legitimately, I feel like it was this stadium was full, but that group provides so much beautiful soundtrack to the match that we didn't know anything. It was just whoa, what the hell is going on? And I don't know what to expect, guys, especially with when Infantino says, "Well, the U.S. is going to welcome the world to watch the World Cup." That doesn't feel like what's going on, man.
Even the Club World Cup, I don't know exactly. I haven't had a chance to speak with Rayados fan groups, but they've got their games in LA. But
All
even
three are at the Rose Bowl. All three of
some
their
of
games
the
are at the Rose
some
Bowl.
of the Flamengo groups I've heard are not going to do their normal tailgate, their normal things. The fans who are traveling from Brazil, I'm sure, will create a great atmosphere. But there's a lot of the U.S. based Flamengo groups that aren't going to do things. These when like when you see these things, you realize just how deep some of these ties run in our country. And even we're joking, a couple of months ago, hey, well, maybe there was a huge Egyptian fan base that we don't know about in the U.S. and they're going to turn up. And it's like, that's something that is cool about this country. And, we're just seeing that dampened right now.
Another competition we talked about a little bit in the last segment, the Club World Cup, also starts this weekend. And, this isn't there are a few, obviously, CONCACAF. There's three MLS teams. There's Pachuca and Rayados. But from a just general tournament standpoint, we've all been fascinated by just what is this tournament going to bring to the table. And, we talked a little bit about what is a successful Gold Cup look like for the United States, for Mexico. John, what does a successful Club World Cup look like for FIFA?
Mamelodi Sundowns making the
Yes.
semifinals. I got to get to the semis. I don't know, man. I don't know what a successful tournament looks like. I think whatever happens, they're going to try and build it as a success.
That's a good point.
I wonder if it's similar to what we saw with Copa America last summer, where you think, man, this could have been run a lot better. This could have been a much better representation of the Americas coming together, of South American soccer, of these immigrant communities that are in the U.S., but it just didn't work with the organizers, with how things sort of. I didn't feel like it was a success, even though I'm sure people made money and advertisers are happy, whatever. So I think it'll be interesting to watch both what the narrative is after and how people feel about it. Is it a tournament that people like in a lot of ways? I think the 2022 Qatar World Cup is like maybe the closest parallel, where I was very skeptical before the tournament, and my friends who went on the ground said, yeah, weird vibe, interesting country, but I'm not dying to go back. But the games were great.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we look back at 2022 and we're like, man, that was a fun World Cup. The games were awesome. I was tuned in. Of course, like you're going to watch every game of a men's World Cup and a women's World Cup, but like a club World Cup, I don't know. So I think that, Armand, for me, the games have to save it. And if the games are good, I think people will tune in. I think people will kind of go. It'll maybe get a little bit of momentum as far as the fan bases and this sort of stuff about, hey, the ticket prices are
For
for the audio.
for me though, like, and I get it, like tickets are a sign of demand. Like I would prefer tickets
Yeah,
to
you're
be
an
dirt
economist.
cheap. Yeah, exactly. I'd prefer tickets to be dirt cheap, so everyone can go watch Messi play or watch their favorite player play in the U.S. Like that's a very anti, I guess, economic supply and demand thing. But for me, guys, a success. I mean, a success is a full stadium. Like what? Like one
Then
full
that's not
stadium
going
in
to be
a final.
successful.
which
That's not going
which
to be
I don't know,
successful.
like a couple, like I don't know, like some of these games are just like how many people are gonna be at these for FIFA? I mean, Infantino might already have his success. He has his name on the trophy twice, which I find absolutely hilarious that it's on there twice. But when it comes to it, some of these matchups, like I get why they're at 11 a.m. or whatever, but it's like,
Well,
is this serious?
Well,
Like I don't.
okay. Here's the thing, though. I think it's a success if the tournament happens and there's no big black eyes. I think it's a success for FIFA because I think this is a long-term play of getting into the club game. This is a 20-year play for Infantino, who is not an old man. They've been trying. No one's cared about clubs from a FIFA side. If this even just goes fine, then 4 years from now, it probably gets a little bit bigger. You probably have a lot more money to send this to Qatar or send it to Saudi Arabia, make a lot more money. And to me, that's the long game for FIFA. But for me personally, as I was digging into it yesterday for my other side hustles of wagering and those sorts of things, and getting my picks in for the Club World Cup, I actually was kind of getting excited about some of these matchups because we talked about Monterrey. Okay, can Monterrey do it in a group that has Inter Milan, River Plate, and Urawa Red Diamonds from Japan? To me, that's very interesting. I think that's an interesting thing to see, and I think that there is a chance that we could get some. Obviously, it's going to have a very low floor and a very high ceiling, but I just think if it happens, it's a success for FIFA in their eyes. If everything happens and it goes off without any black eyes.
I could also see like just an addendum to what you're saying, which I totally hear and understand. I think if it doesn't have black eyes and European clubs want to go back, we know the South American clubs are going to want to go back. We know that CONCACAF teams are happy to be there, and it's in the US this time, so it's quite easy. If the European teams say, "Oh yeah, that was a good experience. We'd rather do that in 4 years than do our own US tour, or Singapore tour, or whatever," then that's a success.
Well, and I'm trying to look up real quick. I can't remember exactly how much money is going to each. Okay, so if you win the tournament, you get plus $40 million. So it's
FIFA is pumping a lot of money into it to make sure it's success.
You get over $100 million if you win this tournament.
If you add up all the wins too, yeah.
Outside of Manchester City and Real Madrid, I don't think there's a team in this tournament, and maybe the Saudis, maybe Al Hilal, but even then, like I'm sure there are some players on Al Hilal where this will be like absolutely life-changing money for them. You kind of think about this, and outside of a few teams, if a Rayados or someone, let's just say that Urawa Red Diamonds makes a run to the semifinals, you can't tell me that won't be, or our Mameloni Sundowns make a run to the final or semifinal. You can't tell me people aren't going to be interested in that. I think there is an opportunity because
I agree, but like I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, let's see what happens, but that to me would be, and I think there is an opportunity for that because I think a team like Inter Milan, I don't think they're going to care about the tournament, but I think there are going to be plenty of teams, big teams that do.
And first game is Saturday, yeah. It's Inter Miami versus
Inter Miami against the
Al Ahly.
Yep.
Bande Club World Cup.
Wrapping it up, another competition just finished out in Cary, North Carolina. So many soccer competitions. This one was the soccer tournament. Did Bumpy Pitch FC won both the men's and women's, correct?
No, they lost the women's.
I think U.S. women's won.
Yep, U.S. women won the women's.
Okay, so
shout out Bumpy Pitch though. Having two teams in two different finals is pretty impressive.
And those guys are American soccer OGs. I mean, I'm sure you know.
I've got a Bumpy Pitch shirt.
Yeah. They were if you know back in the day for sure.
Oh, it doesn't fit me anymore, that shirt. But actually, it's funny. My Bumpy Pitch shirt was the one I kept in my closet. That was, we all have that shirt in our closet. Armand, you'll get there one day. We all have that shirt in our closet that's like, I'll fit into this shirt.
I'm going to get back in that one.
Right, exactly. Oh, yeah. I'm going to get back into this shirt. It didn't happen, and in my recent move, I finally gave up the ghost on that one and gave that one to Goodwill. Which, by the way, a Bumpy Pitch shirt to Goodwill, that's a pretty good purchase for someone.
Someone in Dallas. Someone in Dallas is gonna be rocking a Bumpy Pitch. I was there since day one.
They found.
They'll be like your son, John.
Yeah, they found a steal.
They'll be like your son.
They got a $5 Bumpy Pitch shirt at Goodwill. But so the soccer tournament is one of a lot of different competitions that we've seen pop up. Kings League hasn't really gotten too popular in the United States, but overseas in Brazil and in Spain, it's getting millions of viewers. The Ballers League in the UK is another imitation of this. And Armand, as the youngest one in the group here, the one that's closest to Gen Z, how do you see these tournaments having relevance going forward? And because I was reading an article also about how these tournaments are actually giving almost professional aspirations to players like non-league players in England, et cetera, and potentially careers in the future. How do you kind of feel about this?
The more soccer, the merrier, man. I think personally, like especially with these different formats.
It's just
right?
soccer, though. Like
it's like different formats, though, right? It's a lot kind of like cricket in a way, where there's like different formats for each thing. And I actually do enjoy a 7v7 format. I actually was thinking about. I was watching it like the soccer tournament. I was like, I wouldn't mind playing in a league with those rules. Where it's like it's 7v7. The ball has to advance forward every 8 seconds. Then it goes to the elam ending when it comes to players coming off the pitch, etc. It makes for a different variation of soccer, which introduces a different entry point for people as well too, who want to continue maybe playing the game, maybe older people, or younger kids, etc. And for younger kids, I mean, it might even be a way for them to be better technically as well. It's almost like small sided if you think about it. 7v7, just a lot more forward and direct, and a lot more. I'd probably say it's a lot more like hockey-esque, where you have to get it across the line at some point and go from there. I think it's good for the sport because again, it allows another entry point, and I think I don't think it'll impact 11v11 soccer by any chance. I think it's way 11v11 is way too established, etc. But again, I think it provides just another option, another entertainment option, which again, what I like about the soccer tournament, it's confined to 2 to 3 days versus it being a complete season.
I was just going to say that because I think that the soccer tournament, I personally, just the way I consume, and I enjoy that more than a Kings League or something that lasts a long time or I have to keep up with. It's so easy to just, and I could see maybe something, Daniel, like the Rugby Sevens tour that we're both fans of, where, okay, there's actually multiple different weekends and it's the same folks kind of barnstorming. I would like to note that I think the marketing of this is new. The prizes are relatively new. This has been going on a long time. The guys from Pumas, Alabama, actually, I didn't realize until I saw an interview, but I interviewed the coach for a story I did in 2020 about what I called ringers, which was these teams that play in local leagues, but then they go around and find cash prizes, and that's how they make sometimes their living. That's how they make a little extra cash. Honduran players often, like professional league players, come in the summer and play in some of those leagues. Honduras is kind of controversial. Like national team players will show up, or retired players, and they'll take a big check to kind of be on these teams. So some of those guys are getting, they're too old. But like you're saying, it can relaunch careers. It can kind of get guys back in the picture. I know of a guy that's a Costa Rican champion now who was on that Bombonera team last year. I think he probably would have ended up in top level soccer anyway. He's just a really good player. But, these things aren't entirely new. The shop window is in a lot of ways, and I think that's what makes it cool. Who are these for? We all kind of popped into the tournament a little bit. Kings League, Baller League, some of that stuff isn't really for me, but that's fine. I'm not going to say, hey, don't like this or don't have it happen or this is bad or this is not soccer. Yeah, enjoy what you like. I think we've reached a place, I've said many times in this country, where we're all worried that MLS will collapse or the soccer will go away. It's not. It's here to stay. We're going to be able to enjoy it. And if that's what you love, the tournament or Kings League, hope that sticks around too.
Yeah, and I think, a couple of thoughts here. One, when we think about, this is this newfangled soccer or whatever, it's weird. I know we're not saying this, but the NBA introduced the three-point line less than 50 years ago, right? So it's 50 years ago, the NBA didn't have a three-pointer, and now teams are shooting 80 three-pointers a game, and the NBA hasn't lost any popularity. Armand, something you said stuck with me, and I think we are entering an age now where younger people are becoming more and more isolated. They have more and more reasons to stay at home, and they have more and more reasons to not be social. And that's a sad thing. And I think that if this is an entry point to sports, which for 99.9% of the population are not professional, they are a way we bond over the Mavericks. We bond over different things. We have this podcast, about sports, about soccer, etc. That is what gets us out of the house. Maybe we hang out on a Saturday when we wouldn't have to go to a Dallas Trinity game or an FC Dallas game or whatever it is. Anything that can get people into that and have something to support and find a community and find friends. And I think it's a good thing. And if that means that this is the way that younger people find that community, it's only a positive. It sounds lame, but literally getting involved in anything is better than not getting involved in things.
Literally, and also it's 7v7, right? Most of the population isn't going to play 11v11 full pitch, whatever. This just provides. It's like there's a league in Dallas called Small Goal Soccer, where it's kind of like that same thing. So they play in smaller goals, etc. These are just these variations. I'm all 1,000% for, because again, you get to see you get another way for people to enjoy the game without having to be super fit, super in shape, etc. Which
you got to be pretty in shape. I don't know. I saw those guys going up and down. When you get 2v2,
I think that looks hard.
Well, yeah, we're not. I don't think we're putting a Hex team in the tournament next year.
Why not? No. Let's go for it.
Hey, there were some influencers in there, huh?
Yeah, and I saw Miguel Ayun was in it. That was
man, you put Miguel Ayun
had a team, yeah.
Well, their team, yet another black mark to the rough summer of Club America, not advancing in TST. Well, that'll do it for us. Enjoy. We'll have so much to talk about next week with the first round of the Gold Cup pretty much wrapped up. Club World Cup going on. So thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.